world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
We are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Thursday, April 2nd, as I am recording this, once again getting to it way later in the day. I thought my schedule was going to be clearing up, and I noticed the last several podcast episodes have been going up much later. Still trying to dig into it. I think I've got it figured out, but hopefully I'm getting closer to a resolution. And if not with my automated system, then eventually I'm just going to have to give up on it and go back to just posting them myself. Tried to use the automatic stuff to cheat and try to make things a little easier on myself so I can post while I'm busy at work. And while I get done recording, I can go to bed, whatever, and it can process and do all of its things and get me everything I need to do. Still looking for a better way to do the audio side of things and get things set up on Spotify. I just got to do better about getting everything caught up over there and staying ahead. It's easy to forget because I have everything else on automation. And I sometimes forget to go through with uploading to Spotify. Actually, I do that quite a bit because it's uploaded automatically everywhere else. I wish the program I use that I pay for actually would work with Spotify, but Spotify doesn't allow it. And not that I am a big enough creator on Spotify to monetize, but the only other options that I have found that would work for uploading and automation would actually end up not allowing me to monetize on Spotify, and they would also cost me more money. So not only would I not get paid when I get that to that point, it would cost me money every single month. So I don't like that option. I'm looking for some other option. Now, if I can get to a point when it's automated somehow, that would be great. If not, I just have to get to a point where I can keep it caught up for you guys. Now, talked about it on yesterday's podcast when I got done recording with the Rational Boomer. I recorded yesterday's, and now as you were listening to this, or as I'm recording this anyway, I am today, Thursday's guest over on the Rational Boomer podcast. Jumped in over there. Mike sent me a message, helped him try to figure out something. Next thing you know, we're recording the podcast like we always do. Had a great conversation. It was a good show. Encourage you to go check it out. I'm sure a lot of you that have found me through the Rational Boomer. But if you didn't and you found me first, I encourage you to go check out Rational Boomer and check out his podcast. Mike and I sit down over Zoom. We had a great conversation like we always do. And we talked about a lot of things. Specifically, we talked about that disastrous press conference or press event address to the nation, whatever you want to call it, that Donald Trump did, where he spoke for over 20 minutes and said nothing of any sort of real substance. Now, today, we got some stories to talk about. And one of the big things is Pam Bondi's gone. We heard this might have been a possibility already yesterday, and we find out that Donald Trump fired her. Now, some details have come out that apparently Pam Bondi was begging for more time in the role and was trying to get Donald Trump to uh, continue letting her be the attorney general, but not entirely sure 100% as to why she was let go. My theory is that it has to do with the Epstein files. Um, because Donald Trump wanted her to get rid of the Epstein files. He wanted her to uh, shut it all down, make it so it wasn't a thing, make it go away. And she was unable to do that. She failed. And here we are. What are we at? 5 months post the date all of the files were supposed to be released, 6 months roughly after she failed to prevent the Epstein files from being made public when Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act that Donald Trump ultimately did sign, even though he wanted it to go away. He signed it thinking that he could end up, um, you know, figuring a way out of it, because that's how people like Donald Trump are. I've made this analogy before, and I'm going to repeat it again. Reminds me of a friend of mine. Now, this guy, what he would do is it started innocently enough. There came a month he overspent, and he went to the pawn shop, took some stuff over, got a small loan. Said, "Okay, I'll be good this month." Next month comes by, didn't change anything on his bills, still overspent. Now he owed interest on the pawn shop because he got a loan. He didn't sell the pawn shop those items. He said, "Hey, I'm going to get a loan." Now, pawn shops work differently in every state. Here in Iowa, the default is 20% interest, and it's per month. The default, like, that is how it's set up. Some states it's 3 months and it's less interest, and it changes from state to state. And that's one of the things about certain industries and things like that. They are regulated at the state level. But anyway, he got a loan on his stuff because he didn't want to lose it. Not that it was necessarily sentimental. He just liked the stuff he had, electronics, things like that. But he took it over, got his loan. Okay. Well, end of the next month comes by, no money. He's still short. Still needs more money to pay his bills, and he's got to pay the interest on that first loan. Okay, so he's sitting a little short. He takes even more stuff to the pawn shop, covers the amount he's short on his bills, and then pays the interest on his stuff. Now he owes two loans, or however many. I don't remember if he did it all in, you know, as one loan, or if he broke it out so it'd be easier for him to get out of the pawn shop. Whatever, doesn't matter. He had two different loans with the pawn shop, effectively. And then third month comes around, still short on his bills. Now he owes for two different sets of interest. Okay, now he's got to take them even more stuff. And again, he never sells them anything because he thinks he's ultimately going to get himself uh, out of everything, right? Then he gets lucky. Okay, this friend of mine. We're out at a garage sale, and I love garage sailing, actually. Um, Found some cool things at garage sales. Uh, you never know what interesting thing you might find, and you might just find stuff that you need for cheap. I got a couple of end tables in my living room that I barely use. I just needed them to fill the space, basically, and I think I spent less than $10. Um, but you know, I like going to garage sales. Well, I'm out there going with him, right? He comes across some stuff that's got some value to it, marked relatively cheap. But what does the dumbass do? Instead of taking it to the pawn shop and selling it, he turns around, gets another loan, uses that loan because he wasn't due yet to pay off the interest on his other stuff. He doesn't pay any of that stuff down or do anything with that or use it to pay bills. He goes out and he spends it on something else. He spends it on a third thing. So he is doing all of this, right? And he never gets caught up. He's constantly just trying to, his whole mindset, and I tried to do my best to talk him through it, but his whole mindset with everything was always, if I can just get myself another week, if I can get myself another month. And that's how Donald Trump uh, viewed the Epstein files. He turns around and the only reason he signed the Epstein Files Release Act was because he thought he could talk his way into getting another month, getting another month, and that he would come up with. He didn't change anything, he didn't do anything different, but he really thought he would be able to turn around and get more time, and more time would let him come up with something. Donald Trump believes he is the most brilliant person in the room. Donald Trump likes to believe he is the most brilliant person in any room he is in. And because he likes to believe, and he genuinely believes he is the most brilliant person in any room he is in, that he thinks he can talk his way out of anything. He'll come up with something, and he'll be the only person to think of it. He'll be the genius. He'll be the hero. He really is the main character of his own story, in that he's now a larger than life main character. Listen to the way he talks. I don't know how many things he has said over the years that um, he knows more about than anybody else. Let's see if I can find a list. I looked this up a while back, but here's a small list. I remembered I'd found one. Okay. Nobody knows more about taxes than I do. Nobody knows more about campaign finance than I do. These are all direct quotes from Donald Trump. Nobody knows more about banks than I do. Nobody knows more about trade than I do. I understand tax laws better than anyone. Uh, I know more about drones than anybody. Nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology, certainly than I do. Not even sure what technology he was talking about in that quote. Nobody knows technology. Nobody knows more about technology than me. Nobody knows more about environmental impact statements better than me. I know more about renewables more than any human being on Earth. I understand the power of Facebook maybe better than anybody. Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. Nobody knows more about construction than I do. And that's just a small list. See, Donald Trump likes to think he's the smartest person in the room about every topic. I gave you a small list there. So he thinks if he buys himself another month, 6 months, a year, that he's going to come up with in that time frame some way to get himself out of it. All he needs is time. Now, maybe 20 years ago, he might have been smart enough to at least figure something out. Maybe not a good plan, but he would have come up with a plan. He has only gotten worse over the years. One, he's gotten complacent because he's gotten away with so many things. But two, he has dementia sitting in. I can just feel, just by watching him, that his time is short. Uh, it's getting worse by the minute. 9 o'clock Eastern, that's prime sundowning time for Donald Trump. That's usually when he starts getting wound up watching Fox News. And, that's when he starts getting amped up and he's tweeting or Truth Social posting or doing all of that shit. Uh, he's not focused enough by that time in the night for there to be an address to the nation. That's what we were talking about with yesterday. That was the night before he did that address. It was bad, right? Well, when it comes to, and I guess I lost my train of thought there for a second, but I was talking about him and buying time with the Epstein files, right? His health is getting bad. He's not in the right mental state. That's where I was going. I'm bitching about Donald Trump and his mental state, and I'm losing my train of thought. But mostly that's because I'm doing this off the top of my head. I don't have any prepared notes. I don't have a script. Never have. Uh, Usually, the most I ever have ready to go for this podcast, and I'm glad you guys enjoy it so much, is maybe at most a list of articles I want to definitely cover. Now, uh, so Donald Trump fires Pam Bondi. Okay, that's where I started with all of this. He fires Pam Bondi as Attorney General because she didn't do enough to save him. She didn't save his job, or she didn't save him from the Epstein files or anything else, and he wanted them to go away. He thought he could buy himself enough time that they would go away. He thought he could appoint her or anybody like her when he became president again. And he could say, well, make the files go away, come out and say there's nothing to see, and that would work. And so he did that, and it didn't work. And he's confused because his plan should always work. He's a genius, right? And it's not working. But the calls aren't coming from Democrats saying, hey, release the files. It's coming from within his own party. It's Republicans. It's MAGA. Now, they go out of their way, certain people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they do threaten her to the point where she resigned from Congress. And it works against some people, but there's too many of them, right? So he takes his frustration for not being able to get away from the Epstein files out on Pam Bondi. And this is probably a distraction, not only from the Epstein files by firing her, because he's going to get what he wants. His former personal attorney, Todd Blanche, is now the acting attorney general. And Todd Blanche comes out and says, problem done. We're not going to release any more Epstein files. So he gets his way. No more Epstein files. He thinks he's won. There's a problem. Okay. She's still subpoenaed. I think it's the 14th, 17th, something like that. Let me look it up here. Looking it up here. She is still subpoenaed. And let's see, does this article say? Well, she's still subpoenaed anyway. Trying to figure out what day her test. Oh, found it, April 14th. So just under 2 weeks from now, she's supposed to testify before Congress. And now maybe Donald Trump thinks firing her is going to get her out of testifying. Here's the thing. They didn't subpoena the office of the attorney general and say, well, whoever the attorney general is, come in and testify. No, they subpoenaed Pam Bondi personally. Now, typically you wouldn't subpoena the office of, the attorney general. You would subpoena one person. That's what they did. And they went ahead, and Pam Bondi's going to have to testify before Congress about Epstein, about everything she knows. Now, how is this going to play out? And I'm sure other people are going to ask me, and I'm sure over the next several days, I'm going to get roped into a few other lives on TikTok. I've been doing lives with Trucker T, with the Rational Boomer, with Pamela. And if you don't know who Pamela is, look up on TikTok if you're over there. It's pissed. I don't know how many S's and how many T's. It Pamela. I usually you will find her live with Trucker or Tiffany, Alicia. There's a few others, um, and there's a group of regulars that jump in over there, just like there's usually a group of regulars with the Rational Boomer, and some of those, become regulars also on my lives. We've all kind of become a group. That is one of the things I like about social media is that we do this, right? Like I've met people doing news and politics here online that have become really good friends. Um, None of which I've met in person yet. Eventually, maybe. Um, but we've all become, friends through all of it, and we jump in and we support each other through everybody's live on TikTok and wherever. Support the content. But we all share good information because we all have differing opinions. Now, Pam Bondi testifying before Congress. She's not going to get out of it because she's no longer the Attorney General. In fact, it could be worse for her because she's no longer the Attorney General. She had a little bit of protection being the Attorney General because there were things she could have said. Well, ongoing case. Well, that's an ongoing investigation. Can't relay that. It's an ongoing investigation. Those kind of things. But she doesn't have that option anymore. Now, as private citizen Pam Bondi, she's going to have to answer the questions. And some of the things that I've seen people on TikTok talking about are things like her being the personal attorney for Donald Trump. And that's complicated, right? Could she lose uh, the her law license potentially? Yes. And that would be potentially for obstruction of Congress if she were to be found guilty. Now, one of the things with that is she would have to be found guilty of obstructing Congress or perjury. And they've already talked about bringing perjury charges against her because um, of her comments. I believe was it Eric Swalwell? No, or was it? It was Representative Lee, I think. Ted Lee, Ted Lieu, I think, was the one who caught her perjuring herself, and he said, "You just perjured yourself, and when we are back in the majority, you will be uh, investigated for it, basically." Um, so she could lose her law license at some point. Now she could lose her law license, and if that happens, um, then you know what does that mean? Well, depending on what state she loses her law license in, that it becomes what states does she have her license in only because she has her license in another state. See, I remember with Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani lost his law license because of all of the things surrounding January 6th. And I remember reading an article specifically about him. I don't remember which states it was now. I believe his original law license was in New York. And by having a law license in New York, his license was granted in a bunch of other states because they have a uh, reciprocal program. I know that's not the right word, but um, basically, um, with doing that, it would be um, like him having a with the reciprocity program. And I know that's still the wrong word. Because he had his law license in New York, he would automatically say get Florida and Georgia and all these other states. And from there, um, they would go through, and because he loses his license in New York, he would um, go ahead and have uh, his law license extended in other states. So if she loses it in one state, she could potentially um, have um, her law license revoked in multiple states. See, Donald Trump probably thinks firing her, and making her his personal attorney is going to save him. Now, the other thing she could do is have a uh, she could plead the fifth, right? You could always plead the fifth. You can't incriminate yourself. The thing is, depending on what they ask and how she does it, with her pleading the fifth, uh, it tells them right where to look, right? And it points them in the right direction. Now, why would she defend Donald Trump? Well, maybe she has something on, uh, maybe Donnie has something on her, rather. Whether she's connected to the files. There have been people speculating that she was connected to Epstein through her. I believe she was in beauty pageants as a kid. Maybe there was a connection there. Donald Trump used to own beauty pageants. Remember, he owned Miss Teen USA, and he talked about being able to just walk in on the girls changing. And he'd say, "Well, how did he put it? You have the locker room, and you have, and they're changing. All these girls are changing, and it says no men, but you can just walk in because you own the pageant." See, he's completely classless. That's the problem with Donald Trump. So with all of it, I don't know if firing her is going to save him. He thinks it will. I don't think it will. Um, and she's still going to have to testify, and they're going to be looking at everything going on. And now, if she tries to claim him that she is his personal attorney and tries to say attorney-client privilege, well, there are ways to pierce the veil of attorney-client privilege. One of those being, if crimes are committed, not always does privilege apply. And if there's anybody else in the room, privilege doesn't apply either, because it wasn't a private two-person conversation. So we'll see what they look at with Pam Bondi, how they dig into her. I don't think it's going to be very good for her. She's still going to have to testify, even though Donald Trump doesn't want her to. Okay. So we'll see. They're going to be looking into everything with this Epstein thing, right? They're digging, and Donald Trump thinks firing Pam Bondi is going to save him, and it's just not. It's not going to save him, but he's desperate, right? So he fires her. The uh, new acting attorney general, who is going to have to face Senate confirmation and may not get it. Now, I've said that before about other people with this administration not getting Senate confirmation, and I was only right about one of them, that being Matt Gaetz. I'm pretty sure everybody else that Donald Trump has put up has actually been confirmed. I don't think he was able, or that they blocked anybody else, this administration. So Todd Blanche, his former personal attorney, is going to be potentially the new attorney general. And Todd Blanche has come out and said, "Yep, we're not releasing any more Epstein files. Mission accomplished. We've released everything," even though they haven't. And that's going to be one of the things that gets asked about Pam Bondi, is how much more is there to release? And why didn't you release it all? And we'll have to see what she says. Now, one of the things that could happen here is, if there is some reason for her to protect Donald Trump, she will. But if she is pissed off because he fired her, humiliated her potentially, made her, it sounds like she begged for her job on her own accord, but had her beg for her job, and then turns around and still lets her go. If she doesn't have any reason to protect him and there's nothing else there, then, uh, you know, maybe she does come out and tell everything and bring out all of the truth. And with that, we're going to have to see what that testimony brings. Now, everybody else in this administration should be paying attention. This is now the second woman that has been fired by this administration. First, you had Kristi Noem, and she was fired mostly for embarrassing Donald Trump with how bad ICE and everybody else was handled, with the two shootings in Minneapolis, of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And they turned around and they let her go because of how bad things were with ICE, and they figured she was the culprit, or at least this administration figured she was the culprit. Uh, they were able to convince Donnie that letting her go would maybe save things, and he would be able to, um, get somewhere with ICE and get people back on board. Now, uh, everybody else in this administration, though, should be paying attention because, like I just said, that's two women he has fired. Does that mean somebody like Linda McMahon might be next? We were hearing rumors that Tulsi Gabbard could also be out, as head of uh, intelligence, as head of national intelligence, that she could potentially be facing uh, being removed again because of embarrassing Donald Trump. Um, or does that mean people like Marco Rubio or RFK or anybody, Dr. Oz, could they all be out potentially if Donald Trump gets the right hair to decide to let them go in order to give himself better headlines? So yeah, any of the other members of Donald Trump's cabinet could be on their way out now. Let's see. I had some other things I was going to talk about. Let's see. Got to bring up my list here. Oh, right. So Donald Trump comes out and he's doing, this was the Easter brunch, Easter breakfast. And he says that the United States must spend more money on defense. That that we have to come out with and put out 200 billion to fund uh, the war in Iran. 200 billion, I think I said million. And he goes ahead, says that we need $200 billion more and that we're going to cut it from Medicare, Medicaid, daycare, things like that. And turns around and says, we're going to cut it from those programs. And well, that money can be put onto the states. The states need to pay for it, right? And he says, go ahead, let the states pay for it. Well, here's a problem. A lot of the states are broke. A lot of Republican-led states are broke. They can't afford to pay their bills. Now, even here in Iowa, while we are currently not broke, we will be eventually. One of the things our Democratic nominee for governor, and I say that even though we haven't had a primary yet, is because he is now the only person running. That is Rob Sand, has pointed out, because he's in the auditor's office, that yes, we are operating from a surplus. Okay, there's money in the coffers. We can pay our bills. However, we are running in deficit spending, so there's more month left at the end of the money every time, right? So we're digging into the savings, digging into savings. Eventually, that's going to be gone, and we're not going to be able to pay our bills. But a lot of red states are that way. They can't afford to pay their bills. So he goes ahead and says, well, go ahead and pay for food stamps, pay for Medicare, pay for Medicaid. They can't pay their bills as is. How are they going to do that without raising taxes? See, he put these red states in a bad plan. And he put his own party in a bad way, right? If they take this to Congress and Congress passes it, then all of these states are going to have to come out of pocket for Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamp programs, daycare assistance programs, all of it. He wants states to handle it all. Get it out of the federal budget, right? Cool. Well, if they do that, then how are they going to pay for it? Now, I want to look this up. When I was on TikTok, I was doing it from the top of my head, but I want to, since I taker states versus giver states. Here we go. Okay. So, as I'm looking it up, this one doesn't tell me what. Per dollar. There we go. That's what I'm. Let's see if this tells me. All right. So, I got this is from World Population Review, Donor States 2026, okay? Let's look at California first. For every dollar California kicks into the federal coffers, it gets 73 cents back. Okay? Going here to Iowa. Iowa, for every dollar it kicks into the federal coffers, we get 97 cents back. We're about even, okay? We're a little bit of a donor state, but we're basically an even state. Illinois, for every dollar they send in tax money to the federal government, they get 76 cents back. All right. Now, not all red or blue states are just the donor states, okay? Texas is a donor state. For every dollar that goes into the federal government, they get 75 cents back. Florida, for every dollar that goes into the federal government, they get 79 cents back. But now let's look at what we call taker states. West Virginia, very red, very Republican, very conservative, West Virginia. For every dollar in federal tax money that they spend, that they give to the government, they get back $2.91, almost 3 times what they kick in. And now Donald Trump is saying, here, we're going to take that extra 291 back, basically. We're not going to give you any federal money. Now you got to come up with that $2.91 per dollar you're giving the federal government already out of your own pocket. Okay? Kentucky, $1.68. Same problem. He wants to say, you guys got to fund that difference. Mississippi, $2.66. The worst one, New Mexico, $3.42 for every dollar they kick in. Okay. That means he wants to put all of the federal money, basically. You said that we give them tax money. All of that tax money is going to go to other things, and none of it's going to go back to the states for any of those social programs. And it's going to put the thing on the states to fund it. So what happens with a state like Kentucky? Okay. What happens? They're facing a funding shortfall, right? So do they make it harder for people to get on food stamps? Probably. Do they make it harder for people to qualify, or do they just cut it completely? We'll say, well, we got to fund it. We don't have the money. Nobody gets it. We fought as a country to get to a point in which we had these social safety net programs. And one person, Donald Trump, wants to get rid of them. He doesn't realize how bad he is going to be hurting his own party in a lot of these red states. Okay. Just looking at a few. Montana, $1.43. The Dakotas are basically even. Nebraska's a giver state. Oklahoma gets $1.30 back. Louisiana gets $1.33. Alabama $1.90. South Carolina $1.60. Virginia $1.91. And I don't think I'm not 100% sure if they were on here prior to their most recent governor. Maine $1.78. I mean, you're wanting them to all come up with this extra money, right? How many of them just say we don't have the money? We can't get there without raising taxes. So how do we do it? How do we raise it? Oh, can't. Sorry, we're just out. Sounds like it. I mean, they just got to go without, say, yeah, we're not going to put any money into those programs. No food stamps, no Medicaid, no Medicare. You're on your own. Yeah. You know what I'd say to that guy? If you came to me and said, keep paying in all this tax money, and you were talking to me face to face and said, keep paying all this tax money, but you're going to get no benefit from it, I'd tell you to go fuck yourself. We know what happened prior to having those social safety nets. Those social safety nets came about because of the Great Depression. Great Depression came about because of a myriad of factors. First of all, global recession. Then the stock market crashed, in part because if you look at history, prior to the stock market crash in 1929, the stock market had never done anything but ever go up. It was on a constant trajectory up. And investors looked at it and they thought it was a money-making machine, that it was just printing money left and right. Well, what happened? It crashed. And part of the crash was that people were going, because it was doing nothing but making money, people, banks, businesses, everybody was putting all of their money in the stock market. They were making a fortune on it at one point. Okay. They were doing that. And they go ahead and they say, they're all making a whole ton of money. Well, they go to the bank, they go borrow money, right? If it was me and I see the stock market doing nothing but winning, I go take a huge mortgage on a property that I can't, on a mortgage I can't afford, right? I can't afford it unless the stock market makes money. But everybody's making 50, 100% investment, whatever that rate was. I don't know the exact rate off the top of my head. But you go get this loan, you dump all your money in the stock market, and it's going up like no other, right? All of a sudden, it dips. Now I can't pay the loan. Okay, but it gets worse. I can't pay the money back to the bank that they lent me. Okay, but the bank took the money that other people deposited. First, they lent it to me, but then they also took their money and was playing the stock market. And when the stock market crashed, the banks didn't have any money to pay people back for the uh, accounts they had open. That's where the FDIC came from, because we learned that banks have to have some kind of an insurance plan in case they become insolvent, and they have to be closed, so people still have access to their money. Because what good does it do to go put your money in a bank if the bank can go belly up and you lose everything? But from there, we learned that by not giving people any sort of safety net, it was a bad deal. People were starving literally because nobody had any money to go buy food. Now, some people were okay, the ones that had at least enough land, but we were also in the middle of the Dust Bowl, so the land itself wasn't even producing that well. And Donald Trump wants to basically put all of those programs to make sure that everybody is taken care of on to the states. These states, as I was reading a little bit ago, that can't afford it. It's really that bad. It's really that simple, actually. Is he wants to put it on states and make the states pay for it. Okay. But they don't have the money. They don't. Not at all. Not even close. So what do we do? Well, if they try to put it up, it probably fails in it probably fails in Congress, right? And if they pass it, I don't think it will. And I don't know if, because those things aren't protected by the Constitution, I don't know how a legal challenge to a law passed that would shift the burden to the state would actually go. But I can guarantee you some of these red states would then sue, saying, I don't gotta pay for that. That's supposed to be federally funded. And then you have another long out court case where it's going to be drug out for years, trying to figure out, does the state have to pay it? Does the federal government? Does anybody? Or is this just a way of ending these programs? And in the meantime, people get hurt. But if they do try to pass it in some capacity, what I think is going to happen is that is going to lead to the Democrats winning in the midterms. I think it is going to lead to the Democrats taking. I mean, I've already been saying for a while the House is going to be 30 to 50 seats, and the Senate's at least in play. If they come out with something and actually take and force the states to try to come up with the money for the food stamps and everything else like that, that's going to be enough that would probably push enough people over the edge. And there would be a lot of MAGA that would come out and vote against Republicans. Now, why would they vote against Republicans when they are one? Because it finally kicked them in the ass. It bit them in the ass, and it finally affected them. We're seeing a lot of MAGA out on social media coming around saying, "Well, yeah, I voted for Donald Trump. I voted for him 3 times, but this isn't what I wanted." No, it is. You just didn't realize it would affect you. We warned you. We had all of the facts out there. You screamed at us fake news and Trump derangement syndrome and let's go Brandon and a whole bunch of other bullshit. And you didn't listen to us. You failed the open book test and then went, I should have gotten a better grade. No, you got the grade you deserved and you are getting the results that you deserve, unfortunately, the rest of us have to suffer along with you. Now, last thing I want to touch on is this story. Donald Trump was at the Easter lunch yesterday. This would have been I guess I can't tell if this article lists it as Wednesday, but it also says it's April 2nd, but Wednesday would have been April 1st, so I'm not sure. But he was at an Easter lunch event. It was either Wednesday or today. I'm not sure. I pulled it up though. And Trump admits he's easily swayed by flattery, even from individuals he knows are bad. Trump stated, quote, "When somebody is nice to me, I love that person. Even if they're bad people, I couldn't care less," end quote. Now, the White House had the footage up for a while, and they took it down. I think they thought they were doing something, or they put it up because Donald Trump thought they were doing something. But they admitted what we all knew, right? Donald Trump is won over by flattery. I've said it before, and this is the image that comes to mind. South Park did this last year already when Donald Trump was in the first year of his second term. And basically they had, was it Stan Marsh? No, Randy Marsh, Stan's dad, went to the White House to talk to Donald Trump to get him to do something for South Park. Showed up with a trinket and said, "Well, this is for you, Mr. President. You're the greatest president ever, and no, you don't have a small penis." And there you go. That was enough. Donald Trump was willing to do whatever. And it was played for laughs by South Park, but yet it's true. And Donald Trump admits it. Now, why would he admit it? It's the dementia, right? He doesn't have the ability to not say things out loud anymore. He's struggling. Just like he was commenting about the Sharpies the other day. Now, turns out that Sharpie story was fake. No, he commented about it, but the story he told was a lie. But he couldn't keep it to himself anymore. He had to say this whole story about Sharpie because in his head it fit and it made sense and he had to brag and he had to say it. He said at this event in a recorded clip that the White House put out that when somebody is nice to me, I love that person. Even if they're bad people, I couldn't care less. He told everybody how to butter up Donald Trump and get him to do whatever you want. All right, that is going to do it for the Analytical Iowan podcast for today. I'm going to encourage you to go check out the Rational Boomer podcast for today. Mike and I had a great conversation. We talked about a lot of things like I talked about in the open. Encourage you to go check it out. I want to remind everybody that is watching this that you can email me at analyticaliowan@gmail.com. I will answer all of your questions. Also trying to set up guests on the show if anybody wants to come on. More than willing to set up something over Zoom, figure out how to make it all work, and do any logistics from there. And just have a good conversation, much like what Mike does over on the Rational Boomer. So thank you for taking the time to join me today. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will be back tomorrow with another podcast.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.